this ties in with something that is unfolding in California, which we covered previously. You guys might recall. They have established a fast food industry council in California that uses something called sectoral bargaining to basically set standards throughout that industry for workers in terms of safety, in terms of wages, in terms of hours, kind of every aspect of the working environment. This is similar to a model that's used more commonly in other countries, where it's almost in lieu of shop-by-shop unions. You set one single standard for the entire industry, then everybody's competing on the same level. You have representatives of business and workers who are on the council, and so they come to some sort of agreement. Okay, so that's the backstory. So California, as part of this workers' council, they established a $20 per hour minimum wage for fast food workers. And this is not your little mom and pop small businesses. These are large chains that have been doing quite well, that have record-breaking profits in many instances where, they can theoretically afford this level of labor cost. So this came up as a conversation on the PBD podcast with guest Jesse Waters, making some interesting comments about what he thinks McDonald's workers should earn. Let's take a listen to that.
See if you can do this in your head. You probably can. If you're making $20 an hour to work at a fast food restaurant, all right, is that six figures? Are you making?
No. 40 grand. 40 grand.
50 is just two exits and add a few zeros.
Yeah. Okay, so
$40K a year.
Okay,
full time.
$40K a year.
Yeah.
So, and then if your husband or wife is also there, you're making $100,000 as a family.
Sure.
Both working at McDonald's.
80 grand.
That is okay. That's crazy. That is crazy, because that job really doesn't require much. So it's inflating the entire, labor sector
and the Happy Meal.
Unhappy, very unhappy.
Which I'm very unhappy about, but I believe Gavin Newsom will be president one day. The man is smooth. He's already currying up to the Republican side. You saw him go on Hannity. He dive bombed a couple of Fox News events. He's savvy.
So a lot there, Saagar. But first of all, the attempted math where he thinks, first of all, that $20 an hour is going to net you six figures. That's his first initial reaction, was like, dude, what? And then you try living on $40,000 in LA, Jesse Waters, and tell me how that goes. Even $80,000, you got kids, a whole family. You tell me how easy that is to do. And then for someone whose whole job is, like us, to sit on their asses in front of a microphone, to be saying that McDonald's workers, it doesn't require much for them to do this job, is just complete nonsense. They're adding way more tangible value and doing a lot more difficult work in this economy than you are. So for him to say, oh, it's crazy for them to earn $40K a year for working full time, and still at $40K a year, I guarantee you're going to be rent burdened. I guarantee you're going to be struggling to make ends meet. It's just, what a bubble. What a bubble you are living in.
So I've got some math here in front of me. Jesse, didn't do this one in my head. It was a little bit easier. So $20 per hour. I'm going to assume this is a single filer in the state of California. $41,600 working 40 hours per week. After tax, you are netting $34,350, which means that your monthly take-home pay is $2,833. The average rent, fair market rent for a residential rental property in California today, as of 2024, is $2,345. So if we take $2,800 and we minus it by $2,345, you have approximately $300 to $400 that is left over to pay for health insurance. Presumably, that's not included here, to pay for gas, because you're living in the state of California. We're talking about $5, $6 a gallon, depending on that, and you're driving a lot. You have to pay for internet, phone bill. Do you have a single dollar left over at the end of the month? If you're living on $34K a year take home, you're a single guy and you're working here at McDonald's, you are barely able to survive, and most likely, statistically, you're going to be significantly in debt, credit card debt specifically. So what do we learn from that? That's actually not a quote-unquote livable wage. I completely understand here, by the way. people who have concerns around minimum wage, inflation, and all of that. But what they ignore in the state of California is that we're talking here, one, about the sectoral bargaining that was put in place by the workers to achieve this. But two, is that we already have an incredibly high rental market, standard of living, and others at a baseline level, which makes it where the past minimum wage was not even close to being able to get you there. So if you put it in the context that I just gave you, you can't help but take away that if you're working in one of these jobs, that it's almost, I would say, basically impossible to quote unquote survive $34,000 a year. You'd have to work a shitload of overtime, or you're going to be having to do Uber Eats or something like that in order to supplement your income. And you are still not making a lot of money. Keep this in mind. People are doing Uber Eats and all this other stuff are taking a ton of depreciation on their cars. I think they have to pay extra fees because they have higher car insurance rates. There's a lot of phantom costs that come into any of these quote unquote side hustles too. So I would just, again, illustrate that it's not even close to six figures, even as he is talking about if you have two people who work at McDonald's, $40 an hour, that's going to be $83,000 a year take-home pay. After tax, that is roughly the national average for a household here in the U.S. But national average in California, that's not going to cut it. You need to be making $120,000 to be living a $70,000 life on a national average in the state of California. So you're mostly below, actually, where you need to be.
Yeah, and God forbid you have kids, right?
Yeah, I mean,
and are trying to, afford that. Imagine on a single salary trying to be a single mom and on $20 an hour in California. Forget about it. I just can't take the classism of this, they don't work hard. There's not much involved here. Have you ever worked a fast food job? This is not an easy job. It's actually a very demanding job. And so this condescending notion that, Jesse Waters is working so much hard, contributing so much more than a McDonald's worker, I just find that whole worldview to be so grotesque. Maybe I'm old-fashioned. I think if you are an adult working full-time, you should be able to afford to live, to have an apartment and eat 3 meals a day. That's just me. I think that's where we should be. So the reality is $20 an hour in many places in California still doesn't get you there, but at least it's an improvement. We can put this up on the screen, some more details from the LA Times about what was passed in California. I sort of already went through this, but it says your guide to California's new $20 an hour minimum wage for fast food workers. The pay increase was established by Assembly Bill 1228. It applies to California fast food workers employed by any chain with more than 60 locations nationwide, covers corporate-owned and franchise location. The state has more than 540,000 fast food workers, about 195,000 of them in LA and Orange County, according to 2022 figures. By the way, the previous minimum wage was $16 an hour, so they're getting a $4 increase, which, I'm sure is significant for a lot of people, but is probably not going to be life-changing. Like I said, they probably need a significantly higher wage increase to actually be able to live in LA and in San Francisco and other parts of the state of California. And then the last thing that I told Saagar is I looked up McDonald's annual gross profit to see, whether or not they could weather the storm of the increased wage costs, which again, I want to remind you, this wasn't set by the workers themselves. This was set through a council and through a negotiated process that included these businesses, by the way. But McDonald's annual gross profit for 2023 was $14.56 billion. That was a 10% increase over the year before. 2022's profit was a 5% increase from the year before. 2021's profit was a 29% increase from the year before. So if you look at the trend, McDonald's is doing okay. Their workers, not so much. So God bless them. I hope that this helps make life a little bit easier for them as they're working hard in there.
Well, and let's not forget about the Panera bread exception that we covered previously, which is still
that's the real outrage. Yeah. So just remind you, there was a specific carve out. Turns out Newsom is buddies with the big Panera franchise holder in the state of California. And so they made this specific carve out in the legislation where if you have a bakery involved in your fast food enterprise, for some reason, undefined reason, this doesn't count for you. So Panera gets this, just total corporate carve out. That's the real outrage here. Not that workers aren't making more money. It's that the Panera workers are getting screwed.
Well, actually, Krystal, I just checked just to make sure. It was after the outrage. They then were like, okay, we will comply with the minimum wage law.
Oh, okay.
But legally,
job,
they
guys.
still had, no, but only because that story went viral, including on our channel and I think across the state of California, and people said this is complete bullshit, that they said, okay, we will raise our minimum wage to $20 an hour. So in some ways, it's a hopeful story where they can try and be corrupt, but if they get caught doing it, then guess what? They're actually going to have to come into compliance. So I'm actually somewhat pleasantly surprised by that.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.